But hello, everyone. My name is Erin Jane Nelson. I am the director of Burnaway and an artist myself, and I'm really excited to be the host for today's program. South Arts has been a really amazing supporter of Burnaway, and we are extremely grateful to support their work in this time by convening these programs around the state fellowships and Southern Prize winners. So for those of you who don't know, Burnaway is an Atlanta-based artist-run organization with three core components: a magazine of contemporary art and criticism, career training for aspiring arts writers and cultural journalists, and advocacy for Southern artists and writers. I encourage you all to check out our website, which is at burnaway.org, and subscribe to our weekly newsletter to receive reviews, artist profiles, news, and digital artist projects in your inbox each week. And I'm really excited to present the state fellowship winners that we will be talking to today. And for those of you who are not familiar with South Arts is an incredible advocacy organization that reaches many different aspects of arts and culture in the South. While Burnaway is exclusively focused on visual arts, South Arts serves jazz, musicians, fine artists, theater artists, dancers. So they're an incredible resource. And every year they award 9 state fellowships. I think these are my correct facts. Feel free to jump in if I'm incorrect. And of those 9 fellows, 1 artist is chosen to be the Southern Prize winner. So today we are joined by 4 of those state fellows. We have Ashleigh Coleman from Jackson, Mississippi, Carlton Nell from Appalachia, Alabama, Letitia Quesenberry from Louisville, Kentucky, and Alba Triana from Miami, Florida. And I'm going to start just by introducing these artists' work before we kick off into our roundtable discussion. So to start, I'm going to talk a little bit about Ashleigh Coleman, who, if you want to wave and say hi to everyone, Ashleigh is here. Ashleigh is a self-taught photographer based in Mississippi. She susses out where she lives and what is required of her as a mother through her photography, and looks through the lens of an inherited Hasselblad camera. Her photographs have been exhibited across the United States, including solo shows at Fisher Galleries in Jackson, Mississippi, the University of Mississippi Center for the Study of Southern Culture, and the Claire Elizabeth Gallery in New Orleans. Her work has also been shown at the Griffin Museum of Photography, the University of West Virginia, the University of Southern Mississippi, and is currently part of Looking for Appalachia's traveling exhibition. She is the founding member of the Due South Co-op, a collective of 5 photographers living and making work in and about the South. Ashleigh's work examines both motherhood and the rural land where she lives. Through haunting photographs of a flooded, swollen river in Rodney, Mississippi, she depicts a unique Southern Gothic landscape while tightly composed images of a child's hand reaching for mushrooms on a tree show intimate moments of learning and growing. You can see a few of her amazing photographs here. The next artist on our panel today is Carlton Nell. Carlton is a professor at Auburn University and lives in Appalachia, Alabama, where he maintains a studio practice. Nell's small oil paintings on birch panels capture the essence of a moment, a place, a sensation, and nature. Most of his rich paintings, sometimes built in thick impasto, reference something of the artist has seen in nature and remembers: a cloud formation, a nighttime sky. He is represented by Nancy Hoffman Gallery in New York and Thomas Dean's Fine Art in Atlanta. Most recently, in the works you're seeing here, Nell's silver drawings are part of an ongoing work expressing thoughts that originate from direct observation of the immediate visual surroundings. He's interested in how abstract visual properties like shape, tone, pattern, and scale form a framework for seeing the world. By using these properties as a prism with which to view and suspend the observed world, his hope is that it leads to a deeper experience of it. And so you can see some of these new silver works that Carlton submitted as part of his application as his Southern Prize Fellowship. And Carlton, if you want to wave hello and say hello to everyone so they know who you are. Although I think it'll be quite obvious given that we have three women and one male panelist. And then moving on to Letitia Quesenberry. Letitia lives and works in Louisville, Kentucky. She received a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of Cincinnati. Through the play of material, process, surface, and technology, her work surveys the boundaries of visual perception. Recent solo and group exhibitions include 57 West 57 Arts in New York City, Peter PASD Los Angeles, Smack Melon in Brooklyn, Quappy Projects, 21 C Museums, the Kentucky Museum of Art and Craft, the Speed Art Museum, and the Speed Art Museum in Louisville, Kentucky. She is the recipient of grants from the Great Meadows Foundation, the Al Smith Fellowship, and the Freemanson Contemporary Arts Fellowship. Letitia uses color lenses, filters, shadow, and light as a means of exploring vision's ambiguities. Her artistic concerns involve the cultivation of an aesthetic inscrutability, a type of visual veiling to destabilize our human perception. To this end, she has worked with drawing, painting, photography, text, and light itself. She accentuates nuance, combining semi-transparent materials like color correction film, resin, beeswax, and sanded plexiglass with reflective or opaque materials like graphite, spray paint, plaster, mirrors, coal slag, and mica dust. Through the play of materials, surfaces, and technologies, Quesenberry surveys the boundaries of visual perception, memory's effect on present experience, and how these relate to our ideas of certainty. Letitia, if you want to say hello before I move on. It's probably pretty obvious from seeing some of her amazing artwork in the background of her Zoom. So, and then finally, last but not least, Colombian composer and sound artist Alba Triana is known for a hybrid musical production that explores the interface between natural science, art, and technology, materializing in non-conventional and varied formats ranging from experimental concert music, interactive installations, sound and light sculptures, to vibrational objects. Her work emerges from a deep interest in how nature intrinsically operates, universal laws of chance, natural behaviors and phenomena, and fundamental modes of operation frame her approach to art and music making. Her artistic production is a hybrid and takes a variety of forms, including interactive musical installations, resonating spaces, sound and light sculptures, and vibrational objects. These pieces are expressed both in time and space. They're heard, they're walked through, and they're seen. Especially in the past 10 years, the field of sonic and visual have become unified in her work. In that time, she's also experimented with the properties and behaviors of different types of waves. So you can see some of her work here, and if you would like to wave and say hi, Alba, if you haven't already.
Hello.
I'm excited to have you. Great. So we're going to kind of dive right into it. It's a short conversation, so I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to dig into all of the nuts and bolts. I'm going to ask, I have 4 prepared questions some of which are going to be addressed to 1 or 2 artists specifically, and others will be kind of group conversations. So as I ask them, artists, if you kind of want to speak up, speak out, kind of respond in the moment, that would be great. And then for the last 15 or 20 minutes, we're going to open it up for an audience Q&A. If you guys have any specific questions or thoughts on process or feedback that you want to receive from the artists, they are here. So without further ado, I am going to start with Carlton and Ashleigh. Both of your practices use traditional film-based photo techniques. Ashleigh, while yours is more straightforward and representational, and Carlton, yours is more kind of experimenting with these materials as a drawing technique and a drawing material. I'm really curious about how you're both conveying the landscape through completely different approaches to photography as a medium. And I was wondering if you could both talk a little bit about film as it relates to your work and your process in using it.
Ashleigh.
Carlton, I'll defer to you. I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, thank you. My work on film was really, it began with with some thoughts about how I could work with motion, believe it or not, and try to convey this notion of motion that and change, and the mutability of the landscape and the observation around me. Not just the landscape, but all of the observation experienced, and I did some things in motion, but I didn't think they quite captured what I wanted to do. And then I started thinking of ways to, and with the motion came the idea of film. But I was already working with, I had worked in the past with silver, and silver seemed to allow, it allowed for this, to see the transparency of the film almost as an atmospheric, spatial element in the drawing, to give a greater sense of the depth that we see when we, particularly with a grand subject as large as clouds. There's this overwhelming, to me at least, sense of depth and distance and scale that I thought the film offered, because I could work on both sides of it. I could enhance that effect of atmosphere. So the film is translucent drafting film, so it's got its own sort of cloudiness to it. So I can work on the front side for closer subjects, as you see in some of these, and the back side for things in the distance. And so that's sort of how the film, and the silver just, I wasn't thinking of silver in photography, but it turns out it does, it mimics the silver on the film of photography. Mostly because I use silver because I liked it doesn't smear like graphite does, or charcoal, and it's a little more permanent.
Can you share a little bit? So are you using the film and enlarging them, or is it really about kind of creating a work that exists as a film?
Well, I do think of the work, as I'm working, I'm thinking of these sort of paradoxes of, the large scale of the clouds, and the sort of the distance and the removed nature of that from us, and then the intimacy of a small scale. These are very small. They're only 4 inches by 7 inches or so. So they're really tiny drawings. So it's mostly, in some ways, trying to bring this sort of distant subject to an intimate kind of familiar space with the viewer and with me while I'm working on it. So, and that whole paradox I find very interesting in a lot of the work I do, not just the drawings, but other work that, something can be, I wouldn't say transcendent, but it's bigger than we are, way bigger than we are. And yet you can sort of refer to it in a little tiny piece of film.
And Ashleigh, how about you?
I think I use film for maybe my reasons ended up being very practical, in that I was shooting digital for a while, but with small children, I found that I did not have time to both make art and then process the art or work with it while juggling responsibilities as a mother. And so I found that shooting film allowed me to still create while being present in this very intense season of having young children. And so it kind of became a lifeline for me, because I can make work in the moment, and then because it is medium format film, I save my rolls until the end of the month and then send them off to be developed and get the scans back. And so I don't have as much time on the computer, which is nice. So it's like a way for me to still hold on to something I love and be present at home. And it's also a way for me, it's become a kind of meditative, prayerful practice, as some of these normal, chaotic things happen. It's a way for me to step back and not take it so personally, because sometimes it does feel personal. And to kind of step back, take a deep breath, take a picture, and then the next month I see it and I'm like, well, that was kind of funny. It wasn't as bad as it felt. Or so just wrestling with like the tension and the joy that there is in and having children.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like part of the way that you're framing your work, especially in your artist statement, is the sense of an inherited camera. And I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of, I like that play, right? It's about you inheriting something and then it's used as a lens to view something that you're trying to pass down to your children, or this kind of view of your own sort of the people who will inherit the things that you teach them and give them.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the history of the camera that you're using and I don't know, I'm just curious. I want to know more.
Okay. So the camera, I guess it is pretty layered. So the camera is my husband's uncle's camera, and he originally is from Mississippi but lives in Wyoming. And I just happened to be visiting him when I was doing a cross-country trip with my in-laws in their RV. And at the time, my oldest was 18 months, and I was just traveling with them because I was like, I got to get out of the house, and I'll go with them in their RV across the country with a 18-month-old. And so we were visiting him, and he saw I was shooting with another medium format camera, and he was like, you can still get film for that? And I was like, yeah, you can buy it on Amazon. And so he ran off to his office and came back, and he was like, do you want to use this? And it was, this Hasselblad, which I had actually been looking at purchasing, but I was like, well, I can't afford that right now. And it really shifted the way I shot. And yeah, so he passed it on to me, and now we're living kind of where he grew up and where his sister, my mother-in-law, grew up and where my husband was raised. So it's like these layers of things that I've inherited. And that's another thing I've wrestled through in my work, is that just kind of processing, life not necessarily turning out the way I thought, or, making peace with where I am and the things that I've inherited and the things that the kids will inherit. So, yeah.
Yeah, and for those non-photo nerds among us, Hasselblad is like a Ferrari of a camera.
Yeah.
In the heyday of film, it was like the kind of really fantastic lens. You'll see sometimes things tout having a Hasselblad lens as kind of a signature that they're the real deal. So it's a beast of a camera for sure. Cool. Well, kind of switching gears, I wanted to move over to Alba and Letitia. And really, I mean, I didn't want this to become too COVID-y, but and talking about all of the ways that we are just so sick of talking about those. But for both of your work, I guess I was really struck by how experiential it seemed, working with light, working with sound, thinking about the way the body interacts with objects in space and with installations. I'm just wondering, over the last year, if that has been something that has changed your work to the extent that people aren't able to kind of go see things in person and experience them and be bodies in space in the way that we once understood them. And if so, how, or has it changed any approach to how you're creating objects and installations?
Letitia, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi. I think I've just sort of accepted that everything is on hold right now for almost everyone. And so really been focusing on doing what I can. And so I'm just producing as much work as possible. So,
and do you want to share, I mean, I'm curious a little bit about some of the ways that you are thinking about creating spaces for people. Like what feels really critical about basically making a world that people can step into? I'm really curious about that through your work.
I guess my main interest always is to get people to slow down, to grab their attention as quickly as I can and sort of turn it back on the viewer so that they're confronting their own sensory experience. So I guess it's important in that way to harness whatever I can, and light seems to be useful in that way. Also creating an environment if possible, or just a way to slow people down.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I'm really curious, like reading through your list of materials and the kinds of objects that you're using to build these installations. Like, how are you finding and deciding whether, charcoal dust or resin or neon or, light is the right material for you?
It's a really intuitive process of finding a material that catches my eye and then creating lots of layers where they're sort of interacting. So it's just choosing one thing and following it to the next. So I like sort of having things oppose one another. It creates like a situation where you don't know what you're looking at first.
Oh. And then Alba, I'm curious if you want to speak a little bit to the same
Yes.
aspects of your own work.
Yes, to answer your question, the first question regarding the pandemic, actually for me, the past year was very active, was very stressful. I got more work than I usually, do. Maybe because of the nature of my work, I've been working, virtually for over 10 years now. And I like that format. I feel very comfortable with that format. And last year I had opportunities. For example, I had this exhibition in Barcelona in the Contemporary Center of Contemporary, I know the name in English, but in Spanish, but it's like the Contemporary Center, CCCB, of art in Barcelona. And what I did is that I intervened from my studio and sculpture that was there. So some people were able to go and be present at the museum, and some other people joined online. But the interventions were happening virtually. And I'm very interested in this type of work. Actually, during the past 2 years, I've been working with the support of the Swiss government from Pro Helvetia, which is the Swiss Arts Council. And I've been developing this work that is one work, but it has different locations across the globe. And they are all interconnected, and they manifest the vibrational activity of each location. And it manifests, let's say, if I have the first location, the first iteration will be presented in Bogota, in my country, in Colombia, and in Switzerland. So whatever happens in Switzerland manifests in Bogota and vice versa. So last year, I was supposed to go to Switzerland to work with my collaborator to finish the work. And I couldn't because of the pandemic. And it was a great opportunity because we got to work more on the telematic aspect of the work, which I think is very interesting. So I feel very comfortable. It has been, for me, the pandemic has been like a great opportunity to expand on things that I already was very interested in.
That's great. And I do want to hear a little bit more about how you're figuring out process and materials. I think, sound waves, light waves, it's so kind of above. I think it's such a different way of working than most artists. I'm really curious to hear a little bit about how you came to that and how you're approaching materials and process.
Yes, I come from music, but for more than over 10 years now, I've been working with different forms of vibration. So I just use the name sound artist because I don't know which other definition I would have, I could use. But basically what I do is that I use different forms of energy and vibration. That's what I'm more interested in. I'm interested in exploring nature at a fundamental level. Usually I try to bring to a perceptual realm what usually escapes our senses. So for example, the piece that I presented in the show in South Arts is about a visual sound wave, which is what happens in the photograph that is here in the presentation. There is a loudspeaker, and the loudspeaker excites the string, and then a sound wave becomes manifested on the screen. And then, not in this piece that is in the picture, but in the one that was at the Bob Bartlett Center, the sound wave was interacting with light waves. So I'm interested in using these intangible materials and bringing them to a perceptual realm, and with those materials make my pieces. Actually, the piece that I'm doing in Switzerland with the support of Pro Helvetia, for example, it's a result of a 2-year research project on vibration and interconnectivity at a particle level. So for the development of that piece, I went to the CERN Institute, which is, I don't know, maybe some of you know about this place. Is the Big Particle Collider. So I'm interested in using things that are not tangible and then make them perceptible. That's and I do that because I'm very interested in nature, and I believe that when I explore nature at the very, very fundamental level, I find truths that can be extrapolated at every single level of existence, and in those very fundamental phenomena I feel that we can find the essential elements that have determined who we are, what we do, where do we come from, where are we heading to, what we do. So so that's like the main goal in my search.
Amazing. Yeah. I feel like I already know so much more about all 4 of you. So shifting gears, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can kind of go into a group discussion. Let me figure out how to do that. Boop. All right. Back here. Thanks for bearing with me. Perfect. All right. Hi, everyone. So here we all are now, and I do kind of want to start to just have like a more open-ended conversation. I just have a couple of really basic questions. Some of you guys have already gone into this a little bit, so apologies for any redundancy. And then I also kind of want to give you guys the chance to ask each other questions, which is like my pop quiz that I didn't tell you about ahead of time. So one of the questions I'm really curious about is, you know, the structure of the state fellowship is really about surveying the South as a region and kind of picking people almost as ambassadors for their states. So I was wondering if you guys could each share a little bit of insights into the kind of arts communities that you're a part of locally and statewide, and how sort of living in the South or living in kind of non-traditional, I know some of y'all are in bigger cities, some of y'all are in, you know, more rural areas, like how that has impacted your work and your kind of network of artists. Anyone want to jump in?
I guess I'll start. So Mississippi has a wonderful arts community, and everyone, I've loved living here because it's small enough that I feel like I can really get to know other artists and reach out to people and have developed community and relationship with them. Like Coulter, who is the South Arts prize winner for the very first year. She lives in Water Valley, and I have known her for a while. So it's like being able to have a relationship with her and learn from her practice of quilting. And then Don Lilippo was another recipient of the South Arts Prize, and he lives down the road from me, and we've been able to get to know each other and learn from each other. Rory Doyle lives in the Delta, and he's another photographer. So I feel like the community here in Mississippi is really strong, and it's been neat to have the connections through South Arts, and also just being able to like reach out to other people who, you know, painters and sculptors and stuff like that. So I've loved that about living in this state, is that people are very generous with their talent, and I've learned a lot from the other artists.
I would say being part of a university is a been a great, blessing for me, because I've been able to, not only the artists that teach and that generally practice around a university in a small town like Auburn, the Appalachia area where I'm at, but other fields, we have just people in other fields that aren't even artists that I think I probably interact with as much as the arts community. And it's, but there are some really very talented artists and accomplished just in the local area here. And a lot of that's because of the university. It's been a very nice for me. I've been able to take advantage of that, and I'm grateful for it, for sure.
For me, it has been very interesting. I got to South Florida about 12 years ago. And here in Miami, I found a very thriving visual arts community. But it's very interesting because it's very connected with the American contemporary art tradition. So for me, at the beginning, it was kind of difficult because the sound art community is very small, and there aren't many people working in the line of work that I'm developing, which I know is very unusual. But it's been very interesting for me to bring something also, and then to share with a community that is very strong. So for me, that has been like the main, it is like an interchange. It's a very thriving community, and then I'm coming with something that is very unusual. And also, I feel that since my work is so related to the exploration of nature, and this is a very lush, beautiful, amazing place to be, it's been very stimulating. There's a meditative aspect to when I develop my work, and these surroundings are very inspiring and stimulating.
Well, it also makes sense. I mean, you kind of speak to kind of coming to America and this sort of like American versus other kinds of cultures. And you talk a lot about internationalism in your work. And I think of South Florida as kind of the gateway to a global community in the South. It feels like the most kind of global community. And it definitely makes sense that level of kind of communicating outside of the States from the point of being in Miami makes a lot of sense to me. It's really interesting.
Yes, it's been actually very, very nice because I travel a lot. I show a lot of work outside of Miami. Most of the time I'm showing outside of the United States. And geographically, Miami is perfect. It's everywhere. So that has been another thing that has been very good, that there's a lot of interchange with other people from many, many places. Very stimulating.
And how about up there in Louisville?
It's funny, it's such a tricky question. I'm in Louisville, I've spent most of my life here, so it's quite different out in the state, but it's such a lovely place. I feel it's so easy to be connected to nature here, and that has influenced my work quite a bit. As far as the art community, it's a small city, but so many strong artists, and a real sense of camaraderie exists between us. I think we all kind of try to be really supportive of each other, and we're, I'm in this great studio building, and there's 9 other artists, and we're constantly in and out of each other's space, helping or answering questions. It's a really lovely setup. On the other hand, it's Louisville's pretty segregated. It's still, and so a lot of the events in the last year have brought some things to light that need that need work,
Yeah, absolutely. And then thank you guys all for that insight. I feel like we really got the gamut from rural to kind of these global national cities, and really kind of just demonstrating the breadth of different ways that artists in the South live and work and kind of set up their practices. The reason why I kind of wanted to bring all of four of you together and what made sense as a grouping was this sense through all of your work that there's this endeavor, and I know I kind of asked Letitia and Alba about this a bit, is the sense of kind of transporting the viewer to a world of your own making, of kind of creating a space that is transcendent, that disrupts kind of our normal experience of day-to-day life. Ashleigh, I feel like yours is probably most grounded in day-to-day life, but it still feels like you're kind of transforming even like a thing of blueberries into like this weird new world. And I was just wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about how you're approaching like making work with that in mind, or if there's any sort of like artistic influences or cultural influences, like sci-fi or speculative fiction that kind of maybe speak to why you have this impulse to create transcendent or immersive spaces for the viewer to kind of fall into. It's a toughie, I know. Sorry, that was a big question.
I guess for me, since I'm very interested in exploring nature at a fundamental level, for me, there's something that is very important, and also because I come from music, to create works that unfold not only in space, but also in time. So most of my work, some of my works, many of my works are actual compositions that last, that evolve over time, for example. And they always involve time, space, and they are meant to be heard, to be walked through, to be seen. And I think that in my case, it departs from my exploration, because that's how nature is. We are here, we're looking at a screen, but this is a conversation that unfolds in time. So to me, it just, that's something that develops in a very organic way. When I look for my materials, that's the way they are. They unfold in time. They are visual. And one of the things that I do is that I don't have a technique that I constantly use to develop the work that I want to do. I have questions. I see how I'm interested in responding them, and then I look for the techniques, and then I accept whatever perceptual manifestation the material has. So it's not that I'm looking for something that is audible or visual, but let's say it would be olfactory, I would accept it and I would use it. So it's more about solving the questions and then respecting the perceptual manifestation that the work and the materials need. And usually it involves the space.
When I went to see the show, that is one thing that, particularly the group that we have here, I really felt that there was a speaking to the transcendent, whether it was in the everyday, in Ashleigh's case, or in the quiet of Letitia's work, or the mystery of the quantum world in Alba's work. It really did. You really felt that when you saw the work live. And I think that maybe that's what all meaningful artwork does anyway, is it speaks to something beyond ourselves and bigger than ourselves, and that's what interests me anyway. And I think that the work of the group here that I saw did that for sure when you're in its in front of it live.
I see everyone nodding, so I'm going to assume consensus.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add before we move on? Cool.
I feel like with the work I've been making, especially like with COVID, and you've been starting to hear the articles coming out about women leaving the workplace and having to juggle not only what they're passionate about doing, but also taking on the responsibility of schooling their kids, and like just the pressure cooker. So I feel like the work that I've been making, I've been through the images trying to communicate like that you aren't alone in this process, and you are in this like microcosm of intensity in your own home, but it's something that women are going through all over. And so it's like simultaneously autobiographical in a sense, because it's where we are, but hopefully kind of a lifeline to other people, other women and other parents who are going through similar tensions. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
I don't think she could have picked a better moment to join us.
Yeah, the movie ended, so she's here now.
Well, I was just kind of, before we go into sort of the group Q&A, I was wondering if any of you guys had questions for each other as kind of fellow artists in this process, and having seen each other's work, and now hearing a bit about the background. No? Okay.
Well, I'm curious, Carlton, like how are you, what are you using to create the clouds on the film? Like what kind, is it a pen or
it's a little silver piece of sterling silver wire that's in a pencil holder, like a mechanical pencil holder, and just really fussy sort of application of that. Like you might, a graphite rendering of a subject.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
And Letitia, like your images, like that I was watching behind you, is that glass? And the light is coming through that? I was curious.
Sanded plexiglass with layers of color film. So I've cut the shapes out of the film, and so it's a density of colors with light kind of changing as it goes through.
It looked like some wax too when I saw it live. Is that right? That there's a wax layer in there somewhere? Or
I do love wax, so I try to make the plexiglass kind of look like wax, but it's mostly just sanded.
Oh yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
I love when artists start asking each other questions. It's just like, how do you do that? And like, where'd you get that material? These kind of.
Yeah, you don't have to tell us everything, so it's a recipe that everybody can't reproduce.
Well, we can move on to audience questions. Burnaway's programs assistant, Emily, is going to kind of read them out as they've come in. Emily, do you want to kind of take us through some of the questions we've gotten so far?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Emily, and I work with Burnaway. And we have a few questions in the Q&A, so just want to answer these live. The first one comes from Stopel for Ashleigh, and they're wondering, has Sally Mann's work influenced your choices in any fashion?
Well, it's hard to escape Sally Mann's influence. She is, she's incredible. And so, yes, I love how she photographed her family. And so it is something, her work is something that I have studied and thought about. I think one way I differ from her is that I feel like she had the ability to masterfully compose images that did not feel staged, which is not something, I didn't realize that about it until I read her memoir, that a lot of the photos that are so incredible, it took many takes before she got it right. And one thing I feel like is slightly different is that the work I create is more of a response. It's like an immediate, and if I don't get the image the first time, then it's gone, and it's not like I can convince little bit over here to come back and recreate it. So yes, she does influence me a lot. And I also really appreciate about her that there's so many men that document their families, and for some reason there are fewer women that document their to document family life. And yet I feel like that is something that women primarily bear the brunt of. And so I've wanted to show home life from a female perspective and not just the male gaze. So.
Awesome, thank you. We have another question from Sybil to Alba. They're saying they lived in Geneva for a while. It must have been hard to get into, I think it's CERN, C-E-R-N. What was the most surprising moment for you during your tour?
I think the most surprising moment was when I went to CERN and I didn't know what to expect. And I was taken to the antimatter factory. And I didn't even know that antimatter existed. So for me, it was really, really, really mind-blowing. And I'm a very experimental person. Experimentation is a very important part of my practice. I love the unknown, and my work is very much about confronting the unknown. So going to a place like this and seeing these mind-blowing experiments and learning about the dark matter and antimatter and all of that, for me was just, I was completely blown away.
Wonderful, thank you, Alba. And we have another question for Ashleigh. Can you tell us more about your new show at Fisher?
I'd be happy to. I have 2020 was, even though everything was chaotic worldwide, it ended up being fairly productive personally, since what I'm digging into is something that is always with me. So I was able to create a lot of work last year, and I am very thrilled that Marcy at Fisher Galleries in Jackson, when the South Arts work was being sent back to me, I reached out to her and I was like, hey, would you be interested in this? It's just coming back from the Beau Bartlett. And that led to us talking and me showing her the new work that I've made in the last year. So I'm thrilled to be able to show more work that is of the same ilk that was through South Arts, but more just kind of digging into the tension and the wrestling with domesticity. So that show will be up, I think it opens March 11th, and then it'll be up through the end of March at the Fisher Galleries.
Cool. I think we have time for a couple more questions. If there's anyone else with burning questions, I think we've gotten to the end of what is currently in the Q&A. So just an invitation to any of our attendees, if there's anything else you'd like to ask, please go ahead and shoot them in the chat. Okay. So let's see, we just have some comments of appreciation. Great. So, we're a little bit early. If anyone else has anything else they want to share, any kind of final insights, final questions, I'd love to kind of just open the floor to the artists if they have anything else to say, and also just kind of give a thanks to South Arts for putting this together and kind of making the occasion for us all to have this conversation.
It looks like we have another question. Cool. Carlton, this one is for you. Can you discuss how you move between the small scale of these works and the larger scale of your paintings?
Yeah, for years I only worked small, but I just started thinking about the object, and the small scale seemed to emphasize the idea maybe more than the object. And so I thought if I could scale up, this is in regard to the paintings, which weren't part of the the group for this award. But the paintings, I just felt like I wanted to push color and texture over a larger surface and with the object, which I think is, in my mind, the beauty of painting and drawing flatly, is that it speaks in two different worlds. It has a foot in the mental world and a foot in the physical world, and it seems to navigate both in an interesting way to me. And so I thought if I could go larger, I could push the work more into the world of the immediate and the physical, and it could both be about the idea. At the same time, it's about the artifact, maybe in a little more than it was before. So, and I'm excited about the newest, very newest work is larger, and I'm excited about it. And see if I think some are more successful at doing that than others, but yeah.
Cool. So before we wrap up, we have a request that everyone just share where people can find out more about your art, maybe sharing your website or upcoming exhibitions, and just how people can kind of keep in touch with your work. Feel free to throw them in the chat or just speak. I know really web links aren't that fun to say out loud. But it seems like everyone is throwing their websites and other kind of information in the chat. So for those of you interested in kind of keeping up with them, you can find them there. The South Arts website also has an incredible kind of dedicated page for each of the artists with an artist statement, a bio, images, and kind of where to I think links to your guys' websites as well. So everything should be findable either in the chat or on the South Arts website. Cool. So just to kind of wrap it up, thank you everyone for being here, for taking the time. Thank you to our attendees. It's been really nice just to connect and hear more and get a bit of background into your incredible work.
Thanks to
Burnaway. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you to South Arts, because this has been a very amazing opportunity.
I totally agree. Thank you. And again, very nice work. Everybody's work. Really impressed.
Likewise. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Likewise.
All right. Bye.
Bye.